Hey, Pastor Jerry, thanks so much for this opportunity to address your people and to really step into your shoes. You know, I can never step into your shoes. They're too big for me. Doctor, good reverend, brother, faithful man of God, you are Jerry. I met Jerry back in 2005. I was candidating for the senior pastor position at Temple Baptist Church, and Jerry was the interim pastor. And from the very beginning, Jerry and I have been friends. We love each other. We grew to love each other and just really rely on each other and trust one another. And so Jerry, I've told him this 1,000 times, but I'll say it again because now we're live and it's all over the world because Jerry has followers all over the world. He was John the Baptist for Temple Baptist. He prepared the building, the people for the presence of God. And for that, I am grateful, grateful, grateful. Thank you so much, Pastor Jerry, for doing that. We have benefited from that. Temple Baptist has now, since then, changed our name to Authentic Church. Not to change our name, but to really step into our new God-given destiny, which is to be authentic, passionately authentic. And we say it this way, we want to be unapologetically ourselves. But again, obviously always filtered by love and really just passionately pursuing genuine relationships with people and with God. But you're not here to hear about me or the church. You're here to hear a word from God. And so I prayed about it. I just got a simple phrase from God for you all today. Just be ready. Be ready. Be ready in season and be ready out of season. We know that phrase comes from 2 Timothy chapter 4. And in verse 1, Paul is actually telling Timothy, in the presence of God, I am charging you. And then he talks about Jesus is going to come back and he's going to judge everybody. And today's message is not about judgment, but it's about the reality is that God's going to come back one day and all of us have to give account to our faithfulness. And so be ready. God's saying, be ready in season. Be ready out of season, Paul tells him. He charges him, be ready. And for Timothy, it was to be ready to be a preacher, to teach the word, exhort people, etc. But most of us aren't pastors. Most of us don't have that calling. Some of us are plumbers. Some of us are sanitation workers. Some of us work in the health field. Shout out to our health workers at this time. Thank you so much for your faithfulness. Maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you're a programmer. Maybe you're a school teacher. Again, shout out to our school teachers. Keep going. I know it's a difficult season for y'all, but you're making it. And our children, thank you. And the next generation of leaders, thank our current school teachers. So thank you so much there. That might be your job. But your calling, many times your calling is a little bit different than your job. Your calling is your destiny. Why God has you on earth. And all of us have that. God, the Bible's clear. We all know that, right? And I think back to the people who are faithful to their calling. I think about Esther. Right, a young teenage girl was actually taken and being prepared so the king could have sexual relationships with her and then get rid of her. Oh, but she stepped into her destiny. And in that time, as she stepped into her destiny, she becomes a queen. She steps into a role and she never forgot Yahweh. She never forgot that she was a woman, that she was a Jewish woman on mission with the Almighty God for his kingdom purposes. And she becomes queen and ends up obviously saving her people. I think about the patriarchs. I think about Sarah. I think about Rahab. I think about all sorts of different people. Peter, Paul, right? Oh, we all know Mary. Mary, be ready in season. Be ready out of season. Angel shows up one day and tells Mary she's going to be the mother of the Messiah. Well, that's awesome. So why does God ask us to be ready in season and out of season? We can say in season is like when you know and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Out of season is when it's not as clear and it's kind of off season. But he says you don't have an off season in the kingdom of God. You're ready in season and you're ready out of season. And when we know it's pretty simple, God saves us through Jesus Christ. And he tells us that he saves us. And one of the reasons he saves us is so that we can do the good works that he prepared for us in advance to do. So all of us have a destiny. All of us have good works that are prepared for us to do. And in our faithfulness, we step into doing them. You know, I look at people of history and I have this list of people in my mind who are what I would call the greats of the faith. The people who were faithful in their time. The people who lived through the lion's den, the people who lived through racial discrimination, the people who lived through slavery, the people who lived through being abused as they came over to work on the railroads, and the people who went before the generations that followed them. And I get inspiration from them. We're living in a dark time, difficult time. I don't need to tell you that. It's a crazy time we're kind of living in right now. And what I found is that the darker the time is, the brighter the light shines as we're faithful. And so I think about these greats of the faith. And, you don't set out to be a great of the faith. Because if you set out to be great, the Bible calls that pride, and we really end up following the evil one's advice. But the greats of the faith, they had a couple things in common. One is, they lived through difficult times. They lived in dark times. They lived in times of war and famine. They lived in times of discrimination, like I said before. They lived in a very difficult situation and season, just like we are. But what separates them from their contemporaries is that they were faithful to who they were. So I want you to think 2-3 generations ahead of you right now. Just think about your grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren, or think about the people who are living in 2060 if Jesus doesn't return yet and the second coming hasn't happened. Think about those who are living in 2075 and they're reading about you and me in their history books. And they're reading about us in the Christian biographies. Your grandchildren want to say, my papa, my pappy, my grandma, my mama. She was faithful in her time through COVID and darkness and financial ruins, and she was faithful to who God made her to be. Presence of God, Paul charges Timothy, be ready in season and out of season. Be ready in season and out of season. Now we're going to take a couple minutes to look at Joseph. For those who don't know about Joseph, he's a character in the Bible and he lived. And you can find a lot of his story in the book of Genesis. Pretty much the last quarter of the book of Genesis is kind of devoted to his life. But anyway, Joseph had a great calling on his life, just like you do. We all have a calling. We all have a destiny because we're God's creation and God creates everything with a purpose. And our works are different, like we said earlier. But anyway, so Joseph, he came from a kind of hard family. His brothers were jealous of him. Actually, his brothers hated him. Some of his brothers wanted to murder him. So Joseph shows up one day where his brothers were, and some of them plotted to kill him and murder him. The older one kind of convinced him, let's not murder him. We're not going to get anything from him. Let's throw him in this pit. And then they throw him in this well. And then a caravan comes by and they say, let's sell our brother as a slave. You talk about some need for inner healing from his biological family. Joseph had to be ready in season and out of season to live his destiny. So he had to deal with the jealousy and the hatred of his own biological family. Well, Joseph deals with that, and he sets out and he's faithful, and he goes to this person called Potiphar, and he works at his house, and Potiphar owns him. Joseph is a slave at this point, and he's very faithful, calling over his life. Joseph's a leader. Joseph's a producer. Joseph's one who manages well. That's his destiny. Well, Potiphar's wife wants to have a sexual relationship with Joseph, and Joseph was wise and smart and intelligent and godly enough to resist the temptations. Well, just like Joseph's brother, she became jealous of him and ended up hated him, and so she told her husband Potiphar that Joseph tried to rape her. Lie, deceit. Potiphar gets really mad. Joseph gets thrown into prison. Be ready in season. Be ready out of season. The dark times is many times when we get to know God the best. And this time of COVID is a time we can get to know God in a way we've never had to know him in our past generation. So Joseph gets a hold of God, and he's ready in season and out of season. So in the jail, in the prison there, he becomes really faithful. God's faithfulness was over him. His goodness was over him. So actually Joseph rose to power in there, and the jailer gave him free reign, and he pretty much took care of everybody in the prison. Well, there's a couple of people that worked for Pharaoh. One's called a cupbearer and one's called a baker. That was their job. And they had dreams one night. Joseph interprets both their dream. Both of them come true. And Joseph just implores them, hey, when you get back to Pharaoh, just tell him that I'm here and tell him I'm not supposed to be here. Tell him the person who got me here has lied about it and get me out of here. Okay, we will. Well, the cupbearer never had the opportunity to do that because the cupbearer ended up dying, being killed. But the baker didn't say anything. Family lied, family jealousy. Be ready in season, be ready out of season. Potiphar's wife lied. Be ready in season, be ready out of season. Baker lied. Be ready in season, be ready out of season. So Joseph stayed in prison for a couple more years. God's faith was there. He kept being ready in season and out season. He knew he had a destiny. He knew he had a calling. He knew he had a dream that one day actually he was going to serve in an incredible position, and his brothers were actually going to bow down to him. Not in a matter of pride, but God showed him that. Be ready in season, be ready out of season. Well, Pharaoh has this dream. They don't know what to do with it. His people, his dream interpreters couldn't figure it out. So the baker steps in and says, hey, this guy in prison, Joseph, he told us our dreams. They all came true. So that instant, they go get Joseph. They bring him out of prison. They give him a shave. They wash him up. They put some good cologne on him. They put some good clothes on him. And they present him before Pharaoh. Be ready in season and be ready out of season. Now he goes from out of season because he was in the jail to being in season. Now you need to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And that was part of Joseph's destiny, and part of his calling was to be a dream interpreter. He was more than that, but that was part of his calling. He did it. If he wouldn't have been ready in season and out of season, he would have got his head cut off. If Esther wouldn't have been ready in season and out of season, she would have been somebody who, a concubine that the king had sexual relations with and then discarded. If Mary wasn't ready in season and out of season, she never became the Messiah's mama. Be ready in season. Be ready out season. Your great-grandchildren, the people 2050, 2075, are going to look to you for inspiration. That's what Pastor Jerry's heart is. I know Pastor Jerry, and I know how he teaches, and I know that he wants each of his people that follow him, that learn from him, that he shepherds, to become and be ready in season and be ready out of season, because we never know when it's game day. That's what Joseph faced. It's game day, game on. It's time to face Pharaoh and interpret his dream. And Joseph could clearly hear from God because he was ready. It's like Paul charges Timothy, be ready in season and out of season. You know, you got good works that God has created for you. In this time of darkness, we can focus on the darkness. We can focus on the loss. We can focus on the craziness in politics. We can focus on that sort of thing. But that's not going to help prepare us. What prepares us is us getting into God's presence. And I think Pastor Jerry right now is really helping everybody understand what it means to be in the presence of Jesus. Follow what Jerry's teaching you. But you want to be ready in season. You want to be ready out of season. Well, Joseph interprets the dream correctly. Pharaoh loves it. Joseph becomes number 2 person under Pharaoh and all of the king and all the land. And history goes from there. So what does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with me? What does it have to do with Sunset Ministries? And what does it have to do with San Francisco and your guys' reach beyond that? God has created you to do good works. Be ready in season. Be ready out of season. You never know when it's going to be your game day. You never know when it's going to be your time. You never know when the darkness is going to lift. And as I think I said earlier, the thing about darkness is that the darker it is, the greater your light shines. You're the light of the world. That's your identity. You're the salt of the earth. That's your identity. You're a child of the King. That's your identity. All of us have been called to be God's witness of his goodness to us. That's your future. Everybody lives through dark seasons. Everybody lives through dark times. Every generation, every group of people have darkness and wars and famine and craziness that happens. That isn't what should define you. What should define you is your destiny, is who God made you to be. So my encouragement to you from the presence of God, be ready in season and be ready out season. Pastor Jerry, thanks so much for this opportunity to address your people and address Sunset Ministries and your followers. God bless all of you. Love you, Jerry. Love you, Sunset Ministries, and look forward to next time we can have service together. God bless everybody.